Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, you're not just listening to history, you're slowly drifting into it. Tonight, we travel through a medieval world most people only remember for noise and violence, but we'll explore it differently. We'll move quietly through hidden crimes that unfolded in plain sight, through the long, patient life of a woman who outlived kings and crusades, along dusty pilgrimage roads where walking itself became a form of healing, and finally, to a city that changed hands not with screams, but with restraint. This is not a story about battles. It's a story about control, about what happens when violence pauses, when power learns to stop, and when faith chooses calm over fury. You'll hear about the most notorious figures of medieval times, not through fear, but through understanding. You'll discover how people in the Middle Ages searched for meaning, safety, and rest, just as we still do today. And as the centuries pass quietly in the background, this history becomes something softer, something slower, something meant to help the mind let go. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now close your eyes, let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of the day begin to loosen, and allow yourself to drift into a calmer medieval world where history speaks softly and rest finally has room to arrive. Tonight, we begin not with monsters, but with neighbors, people who woke at dawn to the sound of church bells, who stood in line at the market, who nodded politely as they passed one another in narrow streets. These were not figures hiding in shadows or lurking in legends. They were ordinary faces, familiar voices, trusted hands, and yet, quietly, patiently, repeatedly, some of them killed. Not in moments of rage, but across years. Not as symbols of horror, but as unnoticed parts of daily medieval life. In the Middle Ages, there was no word for serial killer. There was only silence, confusion, and the slow turning of time. To understand why such figures could exist, we must first slow ourselves down and step into a world that moved at a very different pace from our own. Medieval cities were growing faster than their laws could follow. Streets tightened, populations swelled, and strangers became common long before systems of order were prepared to manage them. Information did not travel quickly. News moved at the speed of footsteps, carried by merchants, pilgrims, and rumors whispered in taverns. When someone disappeared, it was rarely recorded. When violence occurred, it was often absorbed into the background noise of a harsh and unpredictable world. Life was fragile, and death was familiar. This familiarity created a strange kind of invisibility where repeated acts of violence could blend into the rhythm of everyday survival. In many medieval towns, justice was local, inconsistent, and deeply personal. Laws existed, but enforcement depended on reputation, witnesses, and social standing. A person known to attend church regularly or to pay their dues on time was rarely questioned. Trust was built not on evidence, but on appearance and habit. And so those who caused harm learned something crucial. Blending in was safer than hiding. The most dangerous individuals were not the ones who looked threatening, but the ones who appeared ordinary. Medieval life also lacked the concept of pattern recognition as we understand it today. Each crime was seen as an isolated event, a tragedy belonging only to its moment. There were no centralized records, no shared databases, no broader awareness connecting one disappearance to another.
A death in one district meant little to a village 2 days away. Even within the same town, memory faded quickly as new hardships demanded attention. Famine, disease, war, and labor consumed mental space, leaving little room for long-term suspicion. In such an environment, repetition could hide in plain sight. Darkness did not announce itself, it simply continued. This is why medieval crimes feel unsettling even centuries later, not because they were more brutal than modern ones, but because they were quieter. The danger was not a sudden act, but the slow accumulation of unnoticed harm. People adapted, they lowered their expectations of safety, they accepted loss as part of life, and in doing so, they unknowingly made room for individuals who understood how to move gently through the cracks of society. These were not masterminds as later fiction would portray, but patient observers of human routine. They learned when streets emptied, when doors remained unlocked, when questions were unlikely to be asked. Medieval life explained itself through repetition, and so did medieval crime. Tonight, as you listen, there is no need to picture faces or scenes in sharp detail. Let them remain distant, softened by time. What matters is not who these people were, but how the world around them allowed silence to grow. In the Middle Ages, the most dangerous person was often the one no one talked about, not because they were unknown, but because they were too familiar. As the hours pass and the mind grows heavier, remember this gently. History does not always shout its warnings. Sometimes it whispers them slowly over centuries, waiting for someone patient enough to listen.
To understand how repeated violence could remain unnoticed for so long, we must look closely at the rhythm of medieval cities themselves. These were places alive with sound and movement, yet strangely disconnected in memory. Bells rang to mark hours, not events. Markets bustled in the morning, emptied by dusk, and filled again the next day, with little concern for what had happened before. People lived close together physically, but far apart socially. A street might contain dozens of households, yet few knew more than the surface of one another's lives. Privacy did not exist as we know it today, but awareness was limited in other ways. Lives overlapped without truly intersecting. In such a setting, absence was common. Someone leaving a neighborhood rarely raised alarm. They might have gone to another town, joined a pilgrimage, or simply fallen ill. Questions were delayed, and delayed questions often disappeared entirely. Medieval life explained loss through probability, not investigation. If someone vanished, the world moved on. This constant movement created an environment where repetition could dissolve into normalcy. When harm occurred once, it was tragedy. When it occurred again, it became misfortune. And when it occurred repeatedly, it was simply life continuing as expected. There was no language to connect these moments into a single pattern. Each event stood alone, isolated by time and distance. Without connection, there was no story to follow, no reason to suspect design. This is where medieval crimes hid most effectively, not behind walls, but behind routine. The structure of medieval authority also played a quiet role. Power was fragmented. Lords governed their lands, guilds governed their trades, and the church governed the soul. Responsibility was divided in such a way that no single force observed the whole. Justice was reactive rather than preventative. It responded to accusation, not absence. Unless someone spoke, nothing happened. And speaking required certainty, courage, and often personal risk. Accusing a neighbor meant challenging reputation, stability, and sometimes survival. Silence was safer than suspicion. Many chose it without thinking. In this silence, those who caused harm learned patience. They did not rush, they waited.
They allowed time to soften memory. Medieval time moved slowly, but memory faded quickly. Days were long, years repetitive, and attention constantly pulled toward immediate needs. Hunger demanded more focus than fear. Work mattered more than worry. Survival came first. This imbalance allowed those who understood routine to exploit it gently. They knew when doors were left open, when streets were empty, when help would not arrive, not because they were clever, but because they were observant. Medieval crime did not rely on speed or force, but on predictability. It followed the same paths as daily life, unnoticed because it looked familiar. Another factor was the medieval understanding of evil itself. Harm was often explained through moral weakness, temptation, or divine punishment. When tragedy struck, people searched for meaning rather than cause. They prayed, they confessed, they accepted. This spiritual framework absorbed responsibility upward, away from human systems. If suffering had a reason, it did not require explanation. This belief offered comfort, but it also discouraged scrutiny. The question was not who did this, but why was this allowed? In that space between cause and meaning, repetition found room to breathe. The individuals we now label as serial killers were not viewed as anomalies. They were interpreted through the same lens as everyone else, flawed, sinful, human. And so they passed through life largely unchallenged. Tonight, as your thoughts slow and the world outside fades, imagine the medieval city not as dark or dramatic, but as steady. Lamps glowing softly, footsteps echoing at predictable hours, doors opening and closing in familiar patterns. In such a place, danger did not announce itself. It blended in, it waited. It relied on the simple truth that people see what they expect to see and overlook what does not disturb their rhythm. Medieval crimes were not hidden by cleverness, but by calm. And it is this calm that makes them unsettling even now, because it reminds us that silence has always been one of history's most powerful disguises.
As medieval communities settled into their routines, something subtle began to shape the way danger was understood. It was not denial, but adaptation. When life is fragile, the mind learns to protect itself by normalizing uncertainty. People learned not to dwell on what they could not change. They focused instead on what was immediate, what was visible, what demanded attention right now. This quiet adjustment created a collective mindset where unanswered questions were gently set aside, not because people lacked curiosity, but because curiosity carried a cost. To question too deeply was to disturb the fragile balance of daily survival. Suspicion threatened trust, and trust was necessary for life to function at all. In a world where cooperation meant survival, doubt was often seen as more dangerous than ignorance. Communities learned to smooth over irregularities, to explain away discomfort, to accept gaps in understanding as part of God's design. When something unsettling occurred, it was absorbed into shared belief rather than examined through shared inquiry. This is how repetition became invisible. The mind, seeking rest, chose familiarity over alarm. Over time, people began to expect loss without demanding explanation. Children grew up hearing stories of neighbors who simply vanished, of travelers who never returned, of accidents that no one quite understood. These stories were not shocking, they were background noise. They did not provoke fear so much as resignation. In this environment, those who caused harm benefited not from cruelty, but from predictability. They knew that memory softened with time, that attention shifted quickly, that the community preferred stability over disruption. Medieval society did not reward vigilance, it rewarded endurance.
Those who endured quietly were praised. Those who questioned openly were avoided. Silence was not enforced, but it was encouraged through custom and belief. Over generations, this created a culture where danger was rarely named, and what is unnamed is difficult to confront. Another important element was the absence of individual identity as we understand it today. People were defined by role rather than personality. Baker, farmer, widow, apprentice. These labels mattered more than inner lives. When someone fulfilled their role, little else was examined. Behavior outside that role was overlooked as long as it did not interfere with communal function. This limited perception made it easy for harmful patterns to hide behind acceptable appearances. A person who worked, prayed, and participated in rituals was assumed to be safe. There was no framework for imagining a hidden self separate from public duty. The idea that someone could present one life outwardly and another privately had not yet reached root. Without that concept, suspicion had nowhere to land. Medieval faith also played a dual role. It offered comfort and meaning, but it also reframed responsibility. Evil was often understood as temptation, weakness, or divine testing. This interpretation shifted focus away from systemic causes and toward moral introspection. People asked whether they had failed God, not whether their world had failed them. This inward turn discouraged external analysis. If suffering was part of a larger plan, it did not need to be solved, it needed to be endured. And endurance in medieval thought was a virtue. This mindset softened the edges of fear. It allowed communities to continue functioning even when answers were missing. But it also allowed repeated harm to remain unexplained. Those who caused suffering did not need to be invisible, they only needed to be unremarkable. In this way, medieval crime became less about secrecy and more about blending. The most unsettling truth is not that violence existed, but that it could coexist peacefully with ordinary life. People shared meals, exchanged greetings, and observed festivals, while danger moved quietly among them, not as an intruder, but as a constant. Tonight, as your breathing slows and your thoughts drift, consider how comfort and danger can share the same space. The medieval world teaches us that silence is not always imposed. Sometimes it is chosen, gently, over and over, until it becomes habit. And habits, once formed, are difficult to break. History for Sleep is not meant to alarm, but to remind us how easily the mind seeks calm, even at the cost of awareness. In that calm, repetition can disappear. And when repetition disappears, the extraordinary becomes ordinary, and the ordinary becomes unseen.
As years passed, memory itself became one of the most powerful forces shaping medieval life. Not memory as a precise record, but memory as a soft, shifting landscape. Events were remembered not for what they were, but for how they felt when recalled. Sharp edges dulled, details faded. What remained was atmosphere rather than fact. This gradual blurring served a purpose. It allowed communities to continue without reopening wounds that could not be healed. Yet it also meant that repetition lost its shape. When harm occurred again, it felt familiar, almost expected, but not connected. The past did not warn the present, it simply drifted behind it like a shadow at dusk. Medieval people did not keep history the way we do now. There were chronicles, sermons, and stories, but these were selective. They focused on rulers, miracles, disasters, and signs from God. Everyday suffering rarely earned a place in written memory. The lives of ordinary people passed largely unrecorded. Their fears, their suspicions, their quiet losses dissolved into time. Without documentation, patterns could not survive.
Without patterns, meaning dissolved. And without meaning, there was nothing to confront. This absence of collective memory made it possible for certain behaviors to repeat without consequence. When no one remembered clearly, no one could accuse with confidence. Memory became impressionistic rather than analytical. It comforted more than it clarified. Storytelling filled the gaps, but stories softened reality. They explained without examining. They reassured without resolving. In this way, medieval communities unknowingly participated in their own forgetting, not out of weakness, but out of necessity. Remembering everything would have been unbearable. Daily life required focus, endurance, and forward motion. Looking back too closely threatened all three. Time itself reinforced this forgetting. Seasons returned in cycles, reinforcing the sense that life was circular rather than linear. What happened before would happen again, not as warning, but as expectation. This cyclical worldview reduced urgency. If suffering was inevitable, why isolate it? Why name it? Why pursue it beyond the moment it occurred? The answer, often, was that there was no reason. The world was as it was. Acceptance replaced investigation. In such a framework, those who caused harm did not need to evade memory. They simply needed to wait for it to pass. And pass it did. Slowly, gently, almost kindly. Even when suspicion arose, it struggled to take root. Accusations required evidence, but evidence required memory, and memory required attention. Attention was a scarce resource. Hunger, illness, and labor consumed it fully. Fear had no space to linger. Communities learned to prioritize what allowed them to wake the next morning and continue. Everything else became secondary. This is how danger was not erased, but absorbed. It became part of the background, like uneven stones in a familiar road. You noticed them only when you stumbled, and then you moved on. The unsettling truth is that medieval serial violence did not rely on secrecy, intelligence, or cruelty. It relied on time. Time that softened shock. Time that dissolved detail. Time that taught people to expect loss without question. Those who moved within this rhythm did not need to hide. They simply needed to wait. Tonight, as your thoughts begin to loosen and your awareness drifts, consider how memory works even now, how quickly moments fade, how easily discomfort is reinterpreted as normal. History for Sleep invites us to observe without alarm, to understand without urgency. The medieval world reminds us that forgetting is not always failure. Sometimes it is survival. But survival has a cost, and that cost, carried quietly across generations, is the space where repetition can exist unseen. As the mind settles, let this thought rest gently. Silence is not empty. It is filled with what time has chosen not to keep.
By the end of the Middle Ages, nothing dramatic announced a change in how danger was understood. There was no sudden awakening, no collective realization that something had been missed. Life simply continued, shaped by the same rhythms that had always guided it. Work resumed at dawn, bells marked the hours, faith offered structure, and memory, once again, softened what could not be resolved. The figures we now call notorious were never gathered under a single name. They were not studied, profiled, or defined. They remained scattered across time, hidden not by secrecy, but by normalcy. Their actions did not stand out against a world already familiar with loss. In many ways, medieval society was not blind to harm. It simply chose a different way of living alongside it. Survival demanded acceptance. Acceptance demanded silence. And silence allowed repetition to settle quietly into the background of history.
What feels unsettling to us today is not the presence of violence, but the absence of alarm. The medieval world teaches us that fear does not always appear as panic. Sometimes it appears as calm, a calm born from routine, belief, and necessity. People did not ignore danger because they were unaware. They ignored it because awareness did not offer solutions. In a world without reliable protection, knowing more did not always mean being safer. So the mind learned to rest instead, to narrow its focus, to choose peace over vigilance. This choice shaped the atmosphere in which repeated harm could exist without confrontation. And yet, there is no judgment here, only understanding. History for Sleep does not seek to accuse the past, it seeks to observe it gently. Medieval people were not careless, they were tired of uncertainty, tired of loss, tired of carrying questions that had no answers. In that tiredness, they built a culture that valued endurance above clarity. Endurance allowed communities to persist through famine, disease, and war. But endurance also dulled sensitivity. It smoothed sharp edges. It made silence feel natural. Those who caused harm moved within this silence, not as predators in hiding, but as participants in the same weary world. Their notoriety is something we assign later, from a distance. At the time, they were simply part of life's unresolved weight. As this chapter comes to rest, there is no need to hold on to discomfort. Let it dissolve the way medieval memory did, gently, without force. The purpose of this story is not to disturb, but to illuminate how easily calm can coexist with danger, and how the human mind adapts to protect itself. This understanding prepares us for what comes next, because the medieval world was not only shaped by quiet harm, but also by quiet strength, by individuals who learned to survive not through force, but through patience. In the next chapter, we move away from the unnoticed and toward the enduring, from those who disappeared into silence to one who remained visible across decades without raising her voice. As your breathing slows and your thoughts drift, allow this transition to happen naturally. The night does not demand resolution, it invites rest. And history, when told softly, becomes not a warning, but a companion.
While some lived in shadows, others moved quietly through power, not with violence, but with patience. After a world shaped by silence and unseen harm, it is easy to assume that influence in the Middle Ages always arrived loudly, carried by swords, banners, and crusades. But history, when slowed down, reveals another rhythm, a softer one, a rhythm shaped by endurance rather than force. Eleanor of Aquitaine belonged to this quieter current of power. She did not announce herself as extraordinary. She did not need to. Born into privilege, yet surrounded by instability, Eleanor entered a medieval world that changed rulers as easily as seasons. Kingdoms shifted, alliances dissolved, faith and war braided together endlessly, and through it all she remained, not untouched but unbroken, not dominant but enduring. Eleanor's life was long by medieval standards, and length itself became her greatest advantage. She lived through multiple reigns, multiple wars, multiple versions of Europe. Where others rushed toward control, she learned to wait. Where others demanded obedience, she cultivated presence. This is not a story of drama or spectacle. It is a story of time and how time rewards those who understand its pace. As a young woman, Eleanor inherited lands that made her one of the most desirable figures in medieval politics. Yet desire did not equal control. Power, especially for women, was never straightforward. It required negotiation, restraint,
and an ability to remain visible without provoking fear. Eleanor mastered this balance early. She learned when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Her influence flowed through relationships rather than commands, through listening rather than declaration. In contrast to the violence explored in the previous chapter, Eleanor's world shows us another truth about medieval life, that survival was not always about avoiding danger, but about moving through it without drawing attention. Eleanor did not escape conflict. She lived inside it. Crusades passed through her lifetime. Kings rose and fell beside her. Scandals followed her name. And yet she outlived them all. Not by conquering, but by remaining relevant. Medieval chroniclers often struggled to categorize her. She was not easily reduced to virtue or vice. She was neither saint nor villain. This ambiguity unsettled writers who preferred simple narratives. But ambiguity was precisely her strength. It allowed her to adapt as circumstances changed. Where rigid figures broke, flexible ones endured. Eleanor understood that power did not need to be exercised constantly to exist. Sometimes it only needed to be preserved. Her presence alone reshaped rooms, courts, and conversations. She influenced not by force, but by continuity. As you listen tonight, there is no need to track dates or events. Let them drift like distant bells. What matters is the feeling of time stretching forward, carrying one figure steadily through it. Eleanor's life teaches us that patience is not passive, it is active restraint. It is the decision to wait while others exhaust themselves. In a medieval world defined by urgency, waiting was radical, and radical patience, practiced quietly, became one of the most effective forms of power. This chapter invites you to rest in that quiet strength, to notice how calm outlasts chaos. As the night deepens, allow Eleanor's story to slow your thoughts. This is not a tale of conquest, it is a tale of staying. And sometimes staying is the most enduring act of all. As Eleanor's life unfolded, her greatest skill became increasingly clear. She understood the value of remaining present without insisting on control. In a medieval world where authority was loudly claimed and fiercely defended, she practiced something far more subtle. She observed, she listened, she waited. This was not hesitation, it was strategy shaped by patience. Eleanor learned early that power did not always belong to those who held the crown, but to those who endured long enough to influence what followed. When circumstances removed her from the center of rule, she did not disappear. She adapted her position, shifting from command to counsel, from visibility to quiet influence. Courts changed, but she remained connected to them. Kings argued, fought, and fell, yet Eleanor's presence continued like a steady current beneath turbulent water. This ability to reposition herself without resistance allowed her to survive political storms that destroyed others. She became a figure who did not rush to respond, knowing that time itself would often deliver outcomes more effectively than confrontation. Motherhood deepened this approach. Through her children, Eleanor's influence extended into the future, beyond any single reign. She did not shape history through sudden acts, but through continuity. Her patience created space for growth, for learning, for legacy. She allowed others to act while she observed the consequences. In doing so, she gained insight without attracting hostility. This balance between involvement and distance defined her lasting power. Eleanor understood that silence could be protective, not empty silence, but deliberate quiet, a quiet that gathered information, a quiet that conserved strength. While others exhausted themselves in constant struggle, she preserved her energy. She knew that medieval politics rewarded those who survived long enough to be useful again. This was a world where fortunes reversed quickly. Today's exile could become tomorrow's advisor. Today's scandal could fade into tomorrow's irrelevance. Eleanor trusted this rhythm. She did not panic when circumstances turned against her. She waited for time to soften resistance. This waiting was not passive resignation, it was active awareness. She watched alliances shift. She allowed others to make mistakes. She remained steady. In doing so, she became indispensable. People returned to her not because she demanded loyalty, but because she represented continuity in an unstable world. In contrast to the violence and repetition explored in the previous chapter, Eleanor's story shows how restraint can shape outcomes just as powerfully as force. Where harm repeated through neglect, influence here repeated through presence. Her life reminds us that history is not only moved by dramatic actions, but by those who understand when not to act. As the night grows quieter, allow this idea to settle gently. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. Eleanor's strength lay in her refusal to rush toward resolution. She accepted uncertainty and allowed it to unfold. This acceptance gave her clarity. She did not need immediate answers. She trusted that time would reveal them. In a medieval world driven by urgency, this trust was rare, and rarity made it powerful. As your breathing slows, imagine Eleanor moving calmly through halls filled with tension, listening more than speaking, watching more than reacting. Her influence was not loud, but it was lasting. And in that lasting calm, we find one of the most soothing truths history can offer, that patience, when practiced consistently, becomes a form of quiet authority that time itself respects.
As the years advanced, Eleanor's influence became less visible and more deeply rooted. She did not need to appear at the center of events to shape them. Instead, she learned to shape the spaces around power, the conversations that happened before decisions were made, and the cultural tone that guided how authority was expressed. This was influence without spectacle, guidance without command. In a medieval world often remembered for its noise and conflict, Eleanor cultivated quiet environments where thought could settle and ideas could travel gently. She understood that culture moves more slowly than armies, but lasts far longer. By supporting poets, thinkers, and artists, she created a network of expression that outlived political alliances. These were not acts of vanity, they were acts of continuity. Culture, to Eleanor, was a way of stabilizing a world constantly in motion. When people shared stories, songs, and values, they carried a sense of order with them, even when borders shifted and crowns changed hands. Eleanor did not seek attention for this role. She allowed others to speak, to write, to perform. Her presence was felt not through declaration, but through atmosphere. Courts influenced by her became places where restraint mattered, where refinement tempered ambition. This refinement was not softness, it was discipline expressed through taste, language, and timing. Eleanor understood that shaping how people thought was more enduring than telling them what to do. In this way, she practiced a form of power that required patience and trust in gradual change. While others demanded loyalty, she cultivated belonging. While others feared losing control, she invested in shared identity. This approach reduced resistance. People rarely oppose what feels familiar and meaningful.
Eleanor's influence blended into daily life, becoming part of how things were done rather than something imposed from above. This subtlety protected her. It allowed her to remain relevant even when formal authority shifted elsewhere. Her legacy grew quietly, woven into habits rather than headlines. As the medieval world continued its cycles of urgency, Eleanor's calm presence offered an alternative pace. She demonstrated that not every response required action, and not every moment required resolution. Some moments needed space. Some questions needed time. This understanding made her influence feel steady rather than intrusive. Those around her sensed continuity in her approach. They returned to her counsel because it did not exhaust them. In a time when exhaustion was common, this was a rare gift. Eleanor's story at this stage is less about events and more about environment. She shaped rooms, expectations, and rhythms. Her power was not seen in sudden changes, but in the absence of chaos. As you listen now, allow this idea to soften your thoughts. Influence does not always arrive as pressure. Sometimes it arrives as calm that others begin to rely on. Eleanor became a reference point, not because she demanded it, but because she remained. In a world that constantly shifted, remaining was itself remarkable. This part of her life teaches us that presence can be a form of leadership and patience a form of guidance. The medieval world often rewarded those who could endure uncertainty without hardening. Eleanor did exactly that. She did not withdraw from complexity. She absorbed it, slowly, thoughtfully, and without haste. As the night deepens, imagine the quiet spaces she helped create, rooms where voices lowered, where time felt slower, where decisions were shaped before they were spoken. In those spaces, her influence lived on, long after her footsteps faded.
As Eleanor entered her later years of life, her presence took on a different quality. It was no longer shaped by movement between courts or the subtle navigation of shifting alliances. Instead, it became something steadier, more grounded. She had seen enough change to understand that influence did not require constant motion. In a medieval world where age often meant invisibility, Eleanor's longevity transformed her into a living memory. She carried with her the weight of decades, not as burden, but as quiet authority. People listened to her not because she demanded attention, but because she represented continuity in a landscape defined by disruption. Her words were fewer now, but they carried depth. Silence, refined over time, became her most reliable companion. This silence was not withdrawal, it was presence without urgency. Eleanor understood that there is a stage in life where action gives way to observation, and observation becomes its own form of guidance. Those around her sensed this shift. They approached her not for commands, but for perspective. She had lived long enough to see patterns repeat, ambitions rise and fall, conflicts ignite and fade. This perspective softened her responses. She no longer needed to prove anything. Her endurance spoke for itself. In this phase of her life, Eleanor embodied a kind of calm rarely acknowledged in medieval narratives. Chroniclers preferred drama, youth, and conquest, but Eleanor's power at this stage came from something less visible: reliability. In moments of uncertainty, people turned to what felt stable. And she felt stable because she had remained when others disappeared. Her memory became a point of reference. Through her, the past remained connected to the present. This connection offered reassurance. It reminded others that upheaval was survivable, that change did not always erase meaning. Eleanor's later years show us how patience matures into wisdom. Not the kind that lectures, but the kind that listens,
She had learned when intervention helped and when it harmed. She chose restraint. This restraint did not diminish her influence, it refined it. Her presence shaped decisions simply by being there. In rooms filled with tension, she brought equilibrium. In conversations charged with ambition, she introduced perspective. This was not control, it was balance. As night settles and the world outside grows quiet, this stage of Eleanor's life offers a deeper rest. It reminds us that not all strength is active. Some strength rests, observes, and remains available. In a culture driven by urgency, Eleanor's stillness was grounding. She showed that time itself can become an ally if one is willing to move at its pace. Her story here is not about endings, but about continuity. Even as years accumulated, her relevance did not fade. It softened into something enduring. Eleanor became less a participant in events and more a stabilizing presence around them. This is the calm we rarely hear about in history, a calm built not from victory, but from survival. As your breathing slows, allow this calm to settle within you. Let the idea of enduring presence ease your thoughts. Eleanor's later life teaches us that there is dignity in staying, wisdom in waiting, and peace in understanding that influence does not always need to be seen, to be felt.
As Eleanor's life approached its final years, there was no dramatic closing chapter, no grand retreat, no final declaration. Her influence did not end with a single moment. It softened, dispersed, and settled into the fabric of the world she had helped shape. This is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of her story. It does not conclude, it dissolves. Eleanor became less a figure of action and more a presence remembered through continuity. Long after she stepped away from active roles, her way of moving through power remained. Others had learned from watching her. They absorbed her patience, her restraint, her understanding of timing. In this way, Eleanor's legacy did not need preservation. It lived on through behavior, through tone, through the quiet choices made by those who came after her. Medieval history often remembers the loudest voices, the sharpest conflicts, the fastest rises and falls. Eleanor's story offers something different. It shows us that influence can outlast authority, that patience can outlive ambition. She did not seek to control the narrative of her life. She allowed time to shape it. This trust in time was her final act of power. By refusing to force meaning, she allowed meaning to accumulate naturally. Her life teaches us that endurance is not resistance, but alignment. Alignment with the pace of the world, with the inevitability of change, with the limits of control. As the medieval era moved forward, new conflicts emerged, new pilgrimages began, new wars were justified through belief and devotion. Eleanor's world faded, but her approach remained relevant. She had shown that it was possible to move through upheaval without being consumed by it, to remain present without dominating, to influence without insisting. These lessons quietly prepared the ground for what came next in medieval life. As this chapter comes to rest, allow its calm to settle fully. There is no need to remember names or dates. What matters is the feeling of steadiness that lingers. Eleanor's life reminds us that not all strength announces itself. Some strength waits, observes, and endures. In the quiet after her story, we find space to breathe more deeply. And from that space, the next chapter emerges naturally. The medieval world now turns toward movement rather than stillness, toward roads instead of courts, toward belief expressed through walking, waiting, and long journeys. As Eleanor's presence fades into memory,
The footsteps of pilgrims begin to sound softly in the distance. The night continues, history flows on, and rest remains our companion.
In a violent age, millions chose to walk, slowly, towards something they believed could save them. After a world shaped by quiet harm and silent endurance, after lives spent navigating power through patience rather than force, the medieval mind turned outward, not to conquer, but to move. Pilgrimage was not an escape from the world, it was a way of surviving it. In the age of crusades, faith was loud on battlefields, but it was soft on the road. There, away from banners and commands, belief became personal, rhythmic, and repetitive, one step after another, one day after another. For many medieval pilgrims, the journey mattered more than the destination, because the journey offered something the world could not: time. Time to think, time to forget, time to reframe a life that had become too heavy to carry. The road did not ask questions, it accepted everyone equally, men and women, young and old, guilty and hopeful, all moved at the same pace. Walking slowed thought, it narrowed focus, it turned overwhelming questions into manageable hours. In this way, pilgrimage functioned as a form of medieval therapy long before the language for such things existed. It allowed the mind to rest by giving the body a simple task: step, breathe, continue. In a society burdened by violence, debt, obligation, and memory, walking became a gentle solution, not a cure, but a pause. Many pilgrims were driven by faith, yes, but faith itself was often intertwined with more human needs. Some walked to escape debts they could not repay. Others walked to leave behind names that had become heavy with shame. Some walked to outrun memories that refused to fade. The road offered anonymity. A pilgrim was defined not by their past, but by their direction. Each step forward reduced the weight of what lay behind. In Crusader culture, where identities were often fixed by role and reputation, pilgrimage offered a temporary release. On the road, you were simply a traveler. The world narrowed to the sound of footsteps, the rhythm of breath, the changing light of the sky. This simplicity was powerful. It quieted the mind in ways no sermon could. The road itself became a companion. It did not judge, it did not demand. It simply extended forward, inviting patience. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, pilgrims discovered that meaning did not arrive suddenly. It accumulated slowly, almost unnoticed. Each morning brought the same routine: arise, walk, rest. This repetition soothed anxiety. It replaced chaos with predictability. In contrast to the violence explored earlier in this story, pilgrimage offered a form of control that did not rely on dominance. You could not command the road, you could only follow it, and in following, many found relief. The medieval world was filled with noise, fear, and urgency. Pilgrimage created silence, not by removing sound, but by replacing it with rhythm. Footsteps on dirt, wind through trees, bells heard faintly in distant towns. These sounds asked nothing of the listener. They allowed the mind to drift gently. Tonight, as you listen, allow your thoughts to walk as well. There is no need to hurry. Pilgrimage was never about speed. It was about duration, about letting time soften what could not be solved. In this chapter, we follow not a battle or a crown, but a road, and on that road, history slows enough for rest to become possible.
As the day's walking came to an end, pilgrimage revealed another of its quiet gifts: the night. When the sun lowered and shadows stretched across the road, pilgrims slowed even further. There was no urgency left. no destination to reach before dark. The body decided the rhythm now. Feet grew tired, shoulders loosened. The mind followed. Nights on pilgrimage were rarely dramatic. They were simple, repetitive, and deeply calming. A shared fire, a modest shelter, a place to sit, to eat, to sleep. For many, this was the first time in years that life felt reduced to its most basic elements. Eat when hungry, rest when tired, wake when light returned. In a medieval world defined by obligation, this simplicity felt like freedom. At roadside inns, monasteries, or temporary shelters, pilgrims gathered without titles. On the road, no one asked who you had been, only where you were going. Conversations were brief and often faded into silence. Words were unnecessary. Presence was enough. In these quiet evenings, identities softened. A merchant became a walker. A debtor became a traveler. A soldier became simply another body seeking rest. This temporary erasure of the past offered relief. The mind no longer had to defend a role. It could simply exist. The road had already done much of the work. Hours of walking emptied thoughts without effort. What remained was calm. Even fear lost its edge at night. Exhaustion dulled it. Repetition replaced it. Each evening mirrored the one before. This predictability was comforting. In contrast to the chaos of crusader campaigns and medieval politics, pilgrimage nights felt contained. They had boundaries. Darkness signaled rest. Light signaled movement. Nothing more was required. For many pilgrims, these nights mattered more than any holy site. They marked the moment when inner noise finally quieted. The body, carrying the mind forward all day, now allowed it to drift. Sleep came not as escape, but as continuation. The road did not end at night. It paused, and in that pause, something healed. Pilgrimage, in this sense, worked not through belief alone, but through rhythm, day and night, movement and stillness. This rhythm rebalanced lives that had fallen out of sync. It reminded pilgrims that time could be trusted, that the next step did not need to be planned. It would arrive naturally. Many carried heavy reasons for walking, but at night, those reasons loosened their grip. Memory softened. Regret lost urgency. The future felt distant and manageable. In a culture shaped by crusades and constant moral pressure, these quiet hours offered rare neutrality. No judgment, no demand. Just rest. As you listen now, imagine one of these evenings. The sound of wind outside a wooden wall. The faint murmur of others settling nearby. The steady return of breath. The road waits quietly beyond sleep, unchanged and patient. There is no need to think about tomorrow. The path will still be there. Pilgrimage taught medieval peoples something essential, that identity is not fixed, and neither is pain. Both can loosen when given enough space. The night provided that space, and in doing so, it transformed the journey into something deeply human, not a test of faith, but a restoration of balance. Tonight, allow your thoughts to follow the same pattern. The walking of the day is done. The mind can rest. The road does not disappear when you sleep. It simply waits.
As weeks on the road stretched into months, pilgrims began to experience a quiet transformation that had nothing to do with doctrine or destination. Time itself changed shape. Days no longer felt urgent, and nights no longer felt like interruptions. Instead,
Everything blended into a single, continuous rhythm. Walking reshaped the body first. Muscles adapted. Breathing deepened. Pain softened into familiarity. With this physical adjustment came a mental shift. Thoughts that once demanded attention began to lose their intensity. The mind learned to move the way the feet did, forward, steadily, without resistance. In Crusader culture, where identity was often tied to allegiance, debt, or duty, this shift was profound. The pilgrim no longer lived in the past or planned aggressively for the future. The road encouraged presence. Each step anchored attention in the now. The weight of earlier life events faded, not because they were resolved, but because they were no longer constantly revisited. Memory became quieter. It did not disappear, but it stopped interrupting. The future, too, softened. It no longer appeared as a list of obligations or fears. It became a horizon, distant and unthreatening. This altered sense of time was one of pilgrimage's most powerful effects. In a medieval world shaped by crusades, where urgency dominated both faith and politics, pilgrimage offered duration instead of speed. Nothing on the road could be rushed. Weather dictated pace. Terrain imposed limits. The pilgrim learned acceptance through teaching rather than instruction. When progress slowed, frustration eventually dissolved into understanding. Resistance wasted energy. Endurance conserved it. Over time, this lesson extended beyond the body. It reached the mind. The pilgrims stopped arguing with reality. They walked within it. This quiet acceptance became deeply calming. It reduced internal conflict. The road did not promise answers, but it reduced the need for them. As repetition continued, identity loosened further. Pilgrims stopped introducing themselves by name or origin. Those details mattered less. What mattered was shared movement, shared rest, shared silence. A sense of equality emerged naturally. Everyone on the road was subject to the same fatigue, the same hunger, the same uncertainty. This sameness dissolved hierarchy. In contrast to the rigid structures of medieval society, pilgrimage created a temporary flattening of roles. For many, this was the first experience of such balance. It was not argued or enforced, it simply occurred. Over time, the road became internalized. Even when resting, pilgrims felt themselves moving forward. The body learned the rhythm so thoroughly that stillness no longer felt like stagnation. It felt like continuation. This is why many pilgrims struggled to return to ordinary life unchanged. The road had taught them a new relationship with time, a slower one, a kinder one. As you listen now, imagine this long stretch of days blending gently together. No sharp edges, no deadlines, just movement measured in breath and light. The medieval pilgrim did not need to understand what was happening to benefit from it. The transformation did not require awareness. It happened through repetition alone. This is what made pilgrimage accessible to so many. You did not need education, status, or certainty. You needed only to keep walking. In this sense, pilgrimage functioned as a quiet reset. It did not erase the past, but it loosened its grip. It did not define the future, but it made it less intimidating. As night deepens, allow this altered sense of time to settle within you. Let minutes feel wider. Let thoughts drift without urgency. The road continues, patient and unchanging, offering rest through movement and peace through duration.
As the journey continued, belief itself began to change shape. On pilgrimage, faith was no longer something spoken loudly or defended fiercely. It became quieter, almost invisible. It lived in small actions rather than grand declarations. A pause before walking at dawn. A moment of stillness beside a roadside cross. The habit of lowering the head without thinking. These gestures required no audience. They were not meant to persuade or prove. They existed solely to steady the person performing them. In Crusader culture, belief was often tied to conflict, obligation, and identity. On the road, belief detached itself from these burdens. It became personal again. Pilgrims did not argue theology as they walked. They rarely debated meaning. The rhythm of the journey removed the need. Faith settled into the body through repetition. Walk, rest, walk again. Each cycle carried a sense of purpose without explanation. This was belief experienced rather than defined. For many, this quiet form of faith felt more real than sermons or vows. It did not demand certainty. It allowed doubt to exist without threat. Doubt simply walked alongside belief, neither dominating the other. This balance was rare in medieval life. Pilgrimage offered it naturally. Along the road, small rituals formed without instruction. Some pilgrims touched the same stone each morning. Others counted steps silently. Some whispered names only they remembered. These acts were not required by doctrine. They emerged spontaneously, shaped by habit and comfort. Over time, these rituals replaced fear with familiarity. The unknown became less intimidating when it was met with repetition. In this way, pilgrimage transformed uncertainty into routine. The road did not promise protection, but it offered structure. Structure calmed the mind. It reduced the impulse to control what could not be controlled. In contrast to Crusader campaigns, where belief demanded action and sacrifice, pilgrimage allowed belief to rest. It asked only consistency. Keep moving, keep resting, keep returning to the path. This simplicity created a sense of trust. Trust in the body, trust in time, trust that progress did not need to be forced. As days blended together, pilgrims often felt connected to something larger without needing to name it. The landscape itself participated in this feeling. Hills rose and fell. Rivers crossed paths with roads. Churches appeared briefly, then disappeared behind trees. Nothing insisted on attention. Everything invited quiet awareness. This gentle presence of the sacred contrasted sharply with the violent expressions of faith common in the era. On pilgrimage, holiness was not defended, it was encountered, slowly, without urgency. This experience softened people. It did not make them righteous, it made them receptive. Receptivity allowed rest, and rest allowed healing. As night approached, many pilgrims felt gratitude without knowing why. The road had held them. The day had passed. That was enough. As you listen now, imagine this quiet faith settling in the background of your thoughts. There is no need to believe anything. There is only the rhythm of attention returning to simple movement and gentle awareness. Pilgrimage reminds us that meaning does not always arrive through struggle. Sometimes it arrives through repetition, so gentle that the mind finally lets go. In that letting go, belief becomes less about answers and more about acceptance. The road continues, steady and unjudging, carrying each walker forward without demand.
Eventually, the idea of arrival began to lose its urgency. For many pilgrims, the destination had always been distant, imagined, almost abstract. Jerusalem, Rome, Canterbury, these places carried meaning not because of what they were, but because of what the journey toward them allowed. As the road lengthened, the goal softened. Pilgrims realized that the road itself had already changed them. The slow erosion of identity, the easing of memory, the steady rhythm of walking and resting, these were not side effects, they were the purpose. In Crusader culture, where holy places were often claimed, defended, and fought over, pilgrimage offered a different relationship to the sacred. It suggested that holiness was not something to be seized, but something to be approached gradually, step by step, breath by breath. This understanding transformed how people experienced faith. The sacred no longer existed only at the destination. It appeared along the way, in a bend of the road, in a shared silence, in the moment when exhaustion gave way to calm. Many pilgrims reached a point where turning back felt as meaningful as continuing forward. The road had already given what they needed. This realization did not diminish the importance of holy cities, it redefined them. Jerusalem became less a place to conquer and more a symbol of longing, patience, and restraint. The journey toward it mattered because it slowed those who walked it. It softened certainty. It replaced urgency with endurance. In a world accustomed to violence in the name of belief, pilgrimage quietly argued for another path, not through words, but through movement. As this chapter draws to a close, the road does not end. It widens. It begins to intersect with larger histories. Armies will march where pilgrims once walked. Faith will be spoken loudly again. Cities will become contested. But the rhythm of pilgrimage remains beneath it all, steady and human. The same roads carry different intentions. Some walk them seeking rest. Others march them seeking control. History will soon turn toward conflict once more. Jerusalem will return to the center of attention, not as a distant hope, but as a focal point of power. Yet beneath the noise that follows, the memory of walking remains. The pilgrim's pace lingers as a reminder that meaning does not require speed, and belief does not require force. As you settle deeper into rest, allow the road to fade gently into the background. Its lesson remains without effort. The journey mattered. The walking mattered. And in the quiet space between steps, the medieval world revealed its most human truth. From here, the story will move toward a city, toward a moment when stillness meets conflict. But for now, the road rests, and so can you. And then, after decades of blood and prayer, the city changed hands, almost quietly. Jerusalem had known noise for generations, shouting crowds, clashing armies, sermons filled with urgency and fear. For centuries, the city had been treated as something to be seized, defended, purified, or avenged. Yet in 1187, when Saladin entered Jerusalem, history slowed. Not because violence disappeared from the world, but because restraint entered the moment. This was not the silence of defeat, nor the silence of terror. It was the silence that follows discipline. Saladin's approach to Jerusalem was shaped not by rage, but by control. He had fought long campaigns. He had seen bloodshed. He understood what unrestrained power did to both victor and victim. And so, when the city returned to his control, he chose something unexpected: limitation. There would be no massacre, no uncontrolled vengeance, no echoing of the atrocities that history had already recorded. This decision mattered more than any military maneuver. It signaled a different understanding of power. Power for Saladin was not proven through excess, it was proven through restraint. In a medieval world accustomed to symbolic violence, this choice felt almost unreal. Chroniclers struggled to describe it. How do you record calm when history expects chaos? How do you explain mercy in an age built on fear? Saladin did not claim moral perfection. He enforced order. He demanded discipline. He insisted that conquest did not grant permission to abandon humanity. This insistence required more strength than destruction ever could. Anyone can lose control. Few can hold it. Jerusalem, for the first time in generations, experienced a transfer of power that did not rely on terror to secure obedience. People remained. Lives continued. The city breathed. This moment did not erase the past. It did not heal every wound, but it interrupted a pattern. And interruptions matter. They remind history that alternatives exist. Throughout this series, we have moved through different forms of control: the unseen violence of medieval crimes, the quiet endurance of Eleanor of Aquitaine, the slow therapy of pilgrimage, and now, here at the center of belief and conflict, we encounter controlled power. Saladin's restraint connected all of these threads. He demonstrated that authority does not require cruelty, that faith does not require fury, and that victory does not require humiliation. In choosing calm, he altered how Jerusalem would be remembered, not as a city drowned again in blood, but as a place where discipline briefly overruled impulse. As night deepens and your thoughts slow, allow this idea to settle gently. History often rewards noise. Sleep remembers something else. It remembers the moments when humans chose not to escalate, not to destroy, not to repeat what had already proven meaningless. This chapter begins not with battle, but with the absence of it. And in that absence, something rare appears: control over the self.
Restraint did not appear by accident. It was practiced long before the city gates opened. In moments when victory feels certain, discipline is hardest to maintain. The mind wants release. The body wants confirmation. Crowds expect spectacle. Yet restraint requires something different: preparation of the inner world. Saladin's calm was not improvised. It was cultivated through habit, belief, and expectation. He understood that emotions spread faster than orders. If anger entered first, it would multiply. If fear took root, it would govern the outcome. So he chose tone before action. By setting the tone, he shaped what followed. This is how restraint becomes contagious. When leaders move slowly, others adjust their pace. When commands are measured, responses soften. The city did not fall into chaos because chaos was never invited. This absence of escalation mattered. It preserved lives not by chance, but by intention. In medieval history, restraint is often invisible because it leaves little trace. Violence leaves ruins. Calm leaves continuity. Yet continuity is what allows a city to keep breathing. Markets reopen. Families remain. Memory does not harden into trauma as quickly. This is not mercy as sentiment. It is mercy as structure. A disciplined framework that limits harm by limiting impulse. Such discipline requires constant attention. One lapse can unravel everything.
Maintaining it means choosing control repeatedly, even when no one is watching. That is why restraint is rarer than conquest. Conquest ends when resistance ends. Restraint continues afterward. It governs what happens next. This distinction is crucial. Power that conquers without restraint inherits instability. Power that restrains itself inherits time. Saladin understood time. He knew that Jerusalem had absorbed too much history too quickly. The city needed calm more than triumph. By allowing calm to settle, he created space for repair. Not healing in the modern sense, but stabilization. The stopping of further harm. This is how control operates at its highest level, not by dominating others, but by regulating oneself. Throughout this series, we have traced different relationships to control. Some lost it, some avoided it, some transformed it into patience. Here, control becomes visible through absence. Absence of revenge, absence of excess, absence of spectacle. And that absence speaks louder than any declaration. As your thoughts slow, notice how this idea feels. Control does not shout, it settles. It lowers the temperature of a moment until movement becomes possible again. In a world accustomed to escalation, this feels unfamiliar. Yet unfamiliar does not mean weak, it means disciplined. As night deepens, allow this quiet strength to drift through your thoughts. Let it remind you that the most lasting outcomes often arrive without force. They arrive through restraint, repeated calmly until the world adjusts around it.
When restraint settles over a city, it does something unusual to memory. It changes how events are carried forward. Jerusalem had learned to remember through trauma. For generations, memory arrived loud and sharp, attached to loss, displacement, and fear. But in 1187, the city experienced something else, a pause that allowed memory to soften before it hardened. This mattered. Cities do not only remember what happens to them, they remember how it felt while it happened. Calm leaves a different imprint than terror. It moves through homes and streets quietly, shaping how people speak to one another afterward, how they sleep, how they expect the future to behave. When violence is restrained, memory does not demand constant vigilance. It allows ordinary life to return sooner. This return is subtle. It is not celebrated. It simply resumes. Shops open. Doors close at night without fear. Children hear fewer warnings. These small changes accumulate into something durable. In this way, restraint alters the emotional climate of a place. It lowers the background noise that keeps societies tense. Jerusalem's memory of this moment did not erase older wounds, but it introduced contrast, and contrast gives perspective. It allows people to recognize that not every transition must repeat the worst version of the past. This recognition is powerful. It reshapes expectation. When expectation changes, behavior follows. The city's collective breath lengthened. Time felt less compressed. The future stopped pressing so urgently against the present. This is how calm spreads, not through instruction, but through atmosphere. Throughout this series, we have explored how humans respond to pressure. Some turned it outward into harm. Some absorbed it into endurance. Some walked until it lost its edge. Here, pressure was met with control. That choice echoed outward, influencing how others behaved in the aftermath. When leaders restrain themselves, they grant permission for others to do the same. Restraint becomes a shared language. It does not require explanation. It is felt. In the days that followed,
Jerusalem did not need constant reminders of authority. Authority had already proven itself through limitation. This is why sleep remembers restraint. Sleep responds to safety, not spectacle. When danger recedes, even briefly, the body relaxes. Breathing deepens. The mind releases its grip. History, when told loudly, often overlooks these moments because they lack drama. But the sleeping mind recognizes them immediately. It recognizes the lowering of threat, the absence of alarm, the permission to rest. These moments stay. They return at night, long after the banners and speeches fade. As your thoughts slow, imagine the city settling, not cheering, not grieving loudly, simply continuing. Lamps lit, paths walked, voices lowered. This is the memory that lasts, not the moment of conquest, but the atmosphere that followed. In that atmosphere, something essential happened. The city learned that control could exist without cruelty, that faith could coexist with calm, that power could stop where it chose. These lessons do not announce themselves. They sink in. They shape how future generations tell the story. Over time, the memory of restraint becomes a reference point, a quiet counterexample. It does not erase conflict, but it tempers it. As night deepens, allow this understanding to settle into your own rhythm. History's loudest moments fade fastest. Its quietest ones endure. They endure because they align with the body's need for rest. They allow the nervous system to reset. They remind us that control, when practiced gently, creates space for life to continue. In this space, memory softens, and the city, at last, sleeps.
As the city settled into its new rhythm, the larger meaning of this moment became clearer. This was never only about who ruled Jerusalem. It was about how power chose to behave once it arrived. Throughout this series, we have watched power take many forms. In the shadows of medieval crime, power hid behind anonymity and fear. In the life of Eleanor of Aquitaine, power moved slowly, patiently, without spectacle. On the pilgrim roads, power dissolved into motion, becoming less about control and more about release. And here, at the end of the journey, power turned inward. It restrained itself. This inward turn is the quiet conclusion of the story. Violence seeks control over others. Authority seeks structure. Faith seeks meaning. But self-control governs all three. Without it, violence multiplies, authority fractures, and faith hardens into certainty. With it, power learns its limits. Saladin's restraint did not erase conflict, it reframed it. By stopping where he could have continued, he demonstrated that control is not proven by how far one goes, but by where one stops. This lesson echoes across centuries because it applies everywhere power exists, in households, in cities, in beliefs, and within the self. History often celebrates expansion. Sleep remembers boundaries. Boundaries create safety. Safety allows rest. This is why restraint feels like resolution. It brings the nervous system back to baseline. It lowers the internal volume. The city's calm mirrored an inner calm made visible. When leaders regulate themselves, the world around them responds in kind. This response is subtle but profound. It changes the pace of life. It reduces urgency. It gives time back to those who live within its influence. Jerusalem's experience in 1187 stands as a rare alignment between belief and behavior. Faith did not demand excess. Authority did not demand cruelty. Power did not demand display. These alignments are fragile. They appear briefly, then fade. But while they last, they teach something essential.
They show that restraint is not weakness, it is coordination between intention and action. As this understanding settles, the entire series comes into focus. The medieval world was not only shaped by violence and conquest, it was also shaped by pauses, by people who chose not to act on impulse, by leaders who understood timing, by individuals who walked instead of fought. These quieter choices did not dominate chronicles, but they stabilized lives. They allowed sleep. As you move closer to rest, notice how this idea feels in your body. Self-control does not demand effort, it releases effort. It stops the endless push to prove, to dominate, to react. In that stopping, clarity appears. The story does not end with a triumph or a loss, it ends with balance briefly restored. And balance is what sleep seeks. In the final moments of this chapter, everything slows. The city remains. Faith continues. Power holds its shape. And within that shape, restraint keeps the edges smooth. This is the conclusion history rarely announces, but it is the one the body understands best.
And so the story settles where it has been moving all along. Not toward conquest, but toward quiet. Not toward certainty, but toward rest. The medieval world we have walked through was loud in its records and relentless in its conflicts. Yet beneath that surface ran a softer current, a current shaped by choices not to escalate, not to answer violence with more violence, not to confuse power with excess. In this final chapter, Jerusalem becomes less a city and more a mirror reflecting how humans behave when belief, authority, and emotion converge. Saladin's restraint does not stand alone as an exception, it stands as a reminder that history is not only driven by what people do, but by what they decide not to do. Across the chapters, we have seen shadows and patience, movement and stillness. We have seen harm born from anonymity, endurance born from silence, meaning discovered through walking, and order preserved through self-control. These are not separate stories, they are variations of the same human question. What happens when we slow ourselves down? When speed gives way to awareness, and reaction gives way to choice, something fundamental shifts. The world does not immediately become peaceful, but it becomes quieter. And in quiet, the nervous system releases its grip. This is why sleep remembers restraint. Sleep does not catalog victories, it responds to safety, to lowered voices, to the absence of threat. In 1187, Jerusalem experienced a brief alignment with this principle. The city did not rejoice loudly, it did not collapse into despair, it continued. That continuation is the true ending of the story. Life resuming without spectacle, faith practiced without fury, authority exercised without cruelty. These are the conditions under which rest becomes possible. As this video draws to a close, allow the medieval world to recede gently. Let its streets dim, its voices soften, its conflicts loosen their hold. You do not need to hold on to the details. The body remembers what matters. It remembers when danger passes. It remembers when control replaces chaos. It remembers when nothing more is required. History remembers conquerors. Sleep remembers restraint. And in remembering it, sleep restores balance. Breathing slows, muscles ease, thoughts lengthen and drift. The journey that began with fear and uncertainty ends with calm, not because the world was resolved, but because control returned inward. This is the quiet lesson carried forward through centuries. Power finds its highest form when it knows where to stop. Faith finds its depth when it no longer demands proof.
and rest finds its way when the mind releases its need to react. Tonight there is nothing left to do. The city is at rest. The story has said enough, and you can sleep.